It's here we go. What's up? All right. Well, if we get viewers, welcome. Yeah, it's been a minute, guys. Welcome back to season 2 of the Long Ball Podcast. Yeah, Hayden and I didn't realize how much college and football would kind of interfere with this podcast going into the stretch of the season and the playoffs. We're sorry we disappeared. We've been here. I know you've kind of seen us on other hardcore sports network shows between the last episode and now. But yeah, I mean, first of all, congrats to the Houston Astros. They won the World Series. I think fully deserving. I feel like that franchise has fully redeemed everything. I mean, that roster was completely different besides, Gurriel, Altuve, and Bregman. The pitchers didn't do anything, in my opinion, from that whole scandal. So I'm going to give my credit to Houston where it's due. But yeah, before we jump into it, I know I kind of asked you a little bit off here, but to be professional, how you been?
Yeah, life's has been going pretty well. Definitely, I know we took a little bit of an absence, during the playoffs and stuff, like we said with school and a lot of things going on.
Yeah.
But we are back and better than ever for obviously the off season and of course the 2023 season. Winter meetings are coming up, so I figured, hey, this would be a very appropriate time to restart, I guess, season 2, as you could say, of the podcast, the Long Ball Podcast. So yeah, otherwise things have been going pretty well. Like I said, tip of the cap to the Houston Astros and of course the Philadelphia Phillies. Philadelphia Phillies won the pennant. Astros won it all. So yeah, definitely the Astros are likely going to be a new dynasty. We'll see how things can go for them. They're going to be definitely a team to try and beat in the future.
And that's the thing. Like, we have a lot of Phillies fans that work at this network, so we definitely got to give them credit. I mean, for the last couple of years, a lot of other baseball profilers had said if they had a chance to get into the postseason, they could do damage. They just got to get there. They did this year, and they freaking did the thing up 2-1, and they had every chance in the world to do it. Shows how good the National League East is. Let's put it that way. Let's get in this chat here real quick. Say hello to everybody. What's up, Pensman Sports? How you doing? Good to hear from you, man. Madala says yellow. Yellow to you as well, sir or ma'am. And he also says a Marlins fan viewer watching Braves fan and Mets fans talking baseball. Yeah, that's the thing Hayden and I put aside. It was very awkward that one Braves Mets game we did, but other than that, I feel like it's been pretty steady breezing here. So yeah, it was a big game that we had to do. Unfortunately, it wasn't this June shootout of any sort. So yeah, we'll start off with the basic news. I'm just glad there's no lockout or pandemic going on this offseason. I feel like it'll legitimately be a fun MLB offseason. I feel like spring training is going to be right around the window. You get to Christmas, and you get past there on the home stretch just after the Super Bowl. But yeah, Stove's been hot. Trades have been a buzz. MLB winter meetings are next week. That's when you see a lot of stuff happen. So we'll start with one of the bigger acquisitions this offseason, the trade of Colton Wong. So the Brewers signed this man back to like a 1 year, $11 million deal. Was not very intriguing on my part when I saw them bring him back. Now it makes a lot of sense. They flip him to the Mariners for failed Astros prospect Abraham Toro and Jesse Winker going back to the National League Central. What were your immediate thoughts on that trade?
Yeah, I mean, it definitely was a very interesting trade. When you put about it, it really comes to the point where it's, like hit or miss. Obviously, like you said, Toro so far, young prospect, hasn't really necessarily fully panned out to where he's been. But, right now, I think the two guys that really stand out as an immediate impact is Colton Wong defensively and Jesse Winker offensively. Colton Wong, I would say the last couple of years has been much more known for his glove than his bat, probably over the last 2 seasons or so. And I guess, looking at this trade, I'd say right now the Seattle Mariners are really, well, both of these, these Mariner and Brewers team are really trying to compete. Both of them are arguably second-place teams in their respective division with a top dog in their division in the Houston Astros and the Seattle Mariners.
Yeah.
And I guess, looking at the Seattle Mariners in this case, acquiring Colton Wong, you ship away Jesse Winker and Abraham Toro. The Mariners entered this winter pretty much trying to improve their lineup. And obviously bringing in Juan, that is pretty much the second acquisition in terms of trade. Obviously, Teoscar Hernandez also to go in the outfield. So, the Mariners are really trying to improve their lineup. Something that, offensively, they were not shabby last year. Their pitching definitely has been looking good. They have young talent. So definitely bringing in some, decent, I don't want to call them veterans, but I mean, compared to the other young guys on the team, theoretically, you can classify Wong and, Teoscar Hernandez as a veteran piece for that team. So I don't think it's horrible. I mean, they've definitely had their fair share of issues when it comes to production offensively. So, like I said, whatever the Mariners could do to make sure they can produce offensively is the route they're going to have to take. So, yeah, I mean, I think it's a pretty solid deal overall. I kind of guess it's a win-win. I mean, Brewers are in a really interesting spot. They could easily just call it this offseason and ship away Burns, ship away Woodruff, Yelich, or they can try and build a couple pieces and see how things go in the first half of the season. So, I guess it's to an extent a win.
Makes a lot of sense. Yeah, I mean, I think it makes a lot of sense if you look at how the National League Central set up the Cubs. If they don't spend money, I mean, if they do, they could directly be right back in the impact of things with the Ricketts. But a lot of Cubs fans have their displeasure to what their owners have been in the previous eras. You still got the Pirates are probably two years away. If you trade Brian Reynolds, which we might get into later in the show, then it gets a little dicey again of where they're at. And then the Reds just continue to keep blowing it up at every facet. Given the Mariners a lot of pieces, it's almost like they're married to a degree. So yeah, for the Brewers, I understand, even though they're a small market franchise, continuing to want to go for it. Because I mean, hey, you were just the 2 seed in the National League and had a great 2021 season. You just had a little bit of injuries. The Cardinals kind of caught their devil magic last year, and you were left out barely at the very end of the season to a very good Philadelphia Phillies team, and even the Padres made some damage. They were right above them. So I understand the Brewers continuing to want to push the throttle, at least for another year or two. I wouldn't be surprised if we look back at this at the beginning of 2025 and they're right back in the sense of not having a lot of pieces left on that team from these previous years. But a point you didn't bring up from their point of view, they saved a lot of money in this trade. And for the Brewers, money is a lot. Money is a very big thing to acquire when you have these guys, as you mentioned, like Corbin Burns, like Lauer, like Willy Adames, that you might want to extend here in the next year or two. That goes a long way for a team like Milwaukee, and I'm sure they're very excited about this trade. A lot of people are calling Jesse Winker a flop, saying that Seattle trade didn't work out, and I think he will bounce back in a huge way. I don't know if he'll be this 30 home run, 285 average guy, but I think he will fill a great void if Yelich continues to not come back, and if Renfroe, of course, does this thing with the Angels. He was another trade that the Brewers made a couple weeks ago. He went from the NL Central to the AL West and was kind of in a platoon role all year. Didn't get used to the pitchers. He didn't get used to seeing Verlander and Urquidy and Framber and, the guys down in Texas like Dane Dunning and not Jacob deGrom, Martin Perez, and a couple other guys. So I think him being back in the National League Central, where debatably some of the pitchers that were great there a couple years ago were gone. I mean, oh, God, you got to face Marcus Stroman and Kyle Hendricks. Sonny Gray and Castillo aren't there anymore. I mean, who do the Pirates have? Quintana went to St. Louis, and, they're the last couple of years. Wainwright's on his last year. So, oh, no, there's familiarity there, but he's not like he's seeing these ace-type pitchers 20 games out of the season. So, yeah, I think the Jesse Winker part will plan out well. Toro, as you said, is interesting. But yeah, I think I think the Brewers were the immediate winner on that trade. But we'll have to see over the next 9 months or so how it pans out. Your buddy Gio Flores tuning in saying LFGM. Good to hear from you, man.
Absolutely.
So, moving past that trade, we kind of mentioned the Hunter Renfroe thing a little bit here and there, but I'll hop back to the agency market, going back to our notes real quick. Mike Clevinger signed a deal with the South Side to the White Sox. That trade never really panned out for the Padres, and they gave a lot. They gave it a whole lot in that trade. I think it was I think McKenzie was in that deal. I think you had what's his face? No, Rucka Baby. What's his face? It's gonna bug me. He was so good this year. He had that grand slam off of Liam Hendricks. He rocked the BB against Garrett Cole. What's his freaking name? Josh Naylor.
Oh,
Thank you. Josh Naylor. And a couple other pieces were in that deal. So a very bad deal for the San Diego side. Comes back to the AL Central. We've talked a lot about the White Sox on this show. What do you first, how do you think how do you look at Clevenger now compared to what you did a couple years ago? And secondly, how does this improve the White Sox to get them where they need to be again?
Yeah, when I saw this signing, I kind of thought it was interesting. I mean, right now you look at the White Sox, they're a team that really collapsed. I mean, we talk about a collapse. They were a team that just really had an unfortunate season, whether it was poor management, injuries. I mean, yeah, those were really pretty much the two kind of contributors to what led the White Sox to collapse or have an unfortunate season in 2022. But I think most importantly, when it comes to Clevenger, yes, it's depth. Right now, the White Sox rotation is definitely in some need of a couple other guys. Obviously, they have a pretty solid rotation. I mean, you look at that rotation, Dylan Cease, Cy Young, is top 5 in Cy Young this year. He had a phenomenal season. You put him side by side. Lucas Giolito, when he's been healthy, he has been good. Lance Lynn, when he has been healthy, he has been good. Michael Kopech, he's young, figuring himself out, has some great potential. You got the bullpen there. So I don't think it's a horrible obtainment. The thing that I do worry about is Clevenger. He's coming off of Tommy John. He pitched a little in 2022, small sample size. But you look at the White Sox, and what killed them last year was was the injuries. Their rotation got plagued with injuries.
Yes.
I don't even think they had one time in their whole 2022 season when all 5 of their guys on the opening day roster were healthy in June, July, August, September. So, listen, I get it. It's Tommy John.
Everything went wrong.
Yeah, I get it. It's Tommy John. It's not necessarily 100% that, he's going to have an injury or he's going to be slow. But, you're trying to avoid health crises and, injuries. Is that a little concerning? Yes. I mean, you look at Clevenger in the past, and he has been a pretty good arm. I mean, like you said, Padres, short sample size, didn't really ever really get a chance to fully play there. Obviously he has AL Central experience. He pitched with the Cleveland Guardians or Indians, whatever they were called back then. So, yeah, I mean, taking a little look-see at his numbers from when he did pitch in the AL Central, they were pretty adequate for the most part. Nothing too crazy, but nothing too bad for the most part. I mean, could give you, 100
rotation too, though, with Kluber and Bieber, like.
No, yeah. And I mean, 100, he can give you 120, 150, innings per season. So definitely, that is always good to explore. So, I think it was a fair obtainment. White Sox are, in that spot where the AL Central is getting interesting. I mean, the Guardians did well this year. They really shocked baseball, but who's going to be second in line? Is it going to be the Twins? Is it going to be the White Sox? Are the Tigers going to somehow pull off? Is the
Guardians just going to take it again?
Yeah, like I said, so that division is up for grabs. I think the
Guardians. I think it's the division.
Yeah, but you still got the wild card spot. Like I said, you have that extra wild card spot. Fight for that second spot because that AL Central last year. I mean, looking at that AL Central, it was close. I mean, maybe not.
We talked about it a lot, yeah.
But 81, that's 500. I mean, like I said, health is important, and I think getting as much starting pitching as possible is what you need. So, if I'm going to rank this signing, I'll give it a solid B.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you on pretty much every side of the boat. Yeah, it's funny because we talked about the AL Central a lot on the few episodes we did last year, and it was interesting because it was finally a race the last couple of years, 7 or 8 years really, when you had the Tigers days with Verlander and Price and Miggy and Prince Fielder. They ran away with it, and then the Royals ran it away with their 2 World Series appearances. Yeah, it was just really a passing of the torch. You had the last couple of years of the Indians were really good, and then everybody thought it'd be the White Sox the last couple of years. And all of a sudden there's a whole jumble. You got the Twins in the fight. You got the Guardians in the fight. You got the White Sox in the fight. It must be an interesting division, right? No. It was a battle of who's going to get third place and face the Yankees and be just above 500. And, yeah, the Guardians gave the Yankees everything they could in that American League DS, pushing it to 5. I think if they would have thrown a better arm out there at Game 5, I think it would have been a lot more interesting than what Terry Francona did, a very rare blunder of for a manager that is usually on the top of his game. But AL Central talk, it seems like it's just going to be a running meme in this podcast in the next couple seasons to come. So we talked about Colton Wong and Mike Clevenger. Oh, excuse me. I just knocked my desk. Staying with the White Sox here, Jose Abreu going to Houston. The White Sox offered him a similar deal, probably a little bit more. He said, I'm out of here. Y'all can find something else to do. Play Jake Burger at first. Do whatever you want. I'm going to Houston. I'm chasing a ring. Yeah, similar question here. How do you think this affects the White Sox? And is Abreu just ready to get going?
Yeah, I mean, right now, Abreu to the Astros, I mean, that just makes this Astros team just more scary next year. I mean, the former 2020 AL MVP, definitely had a phenomenal season this year. I mean, he was the one of few guys on that White Sox team who never really missed many games. I mean, 157 games played. You look at his numbers. I mean, you look at that average, 304 average, keeping it basic. 15 home runs, 75 ribbies, walks,
very basic, 300 hitter.
So look, those are so some of the more so basic stats, if you want to say, for 378 OBP, 824 OPS. So definitely above average stats when it comes to him. Decent first baseman defensively, nothing too crazy, but nothing too bad. But I just think that this just makes this Astros lineup just much more insane. He's going to come in. He's going to replace Yuli Gurriel. Obviously Abreu was 35, 36. Gurriel was 38. Not many people knew that. He's definitely an older player, obviously, so that gives 3 years, 4 years to someone's junior. So that definitely is a benefit for the Houston Astros to have someone a little bit younger at first base. Yeah, I mean, I think it's a really good signing. Just slotting Abreu with a guy who is contact oriented, is capable of giving you 20, 25 home runs a season. Could walk decently. Strikeout to walk ratio is pretty decent for the most part. So there's really nothing against it for the Houston Astros signing him. I mean, you look at that, Astros infield now. I mean, with Abreu, Altuve, Pena, Bregman. I mean, that's a pretty solid infield, arguably one of the best in baseball. You can make an argument.
They still might add a catcher. Yeah.
Fair enough. But, definitely still a really solid infield. I mean, there's nothing not to like that. If you're an Astros fan, definitely a good move. It's a big benefit over having a guy like Yuli Gurriel. When it comes to the White Sox, it's definitely a blow. We'll see how the White Sox go on and handle, how their first base is going to look for the future. But definitely a really good move for Houston.
Yeah, I mean, it can't get much better than winning a World Series. Yeah, as you said, you look around that lineup, they're still in the market of getting a catcher, whether it's Wilson Contreras, whether they somehow pry Sean Murphy away from their in-division rival. They'll find somebody, whether it's just bringing Christian Vasquez back and thinking he'll do better for another year, because, I mean, he's still not the worst offensive catcher. I understood why they never hated Martin Maldonado there. They had so much offense around the rest of the lineup. Maldonado walked enough, and he did enough behind the plate defensively where you were really just willing to sacrifice a little bit of that offense behind the plate with a Maldonado back there. And I guess they had that other guy who hit that homer versus you guys in June. I forget who his name was, but he had 080 for most of the year too. So the catching offensive production Astros has not really been a priority. But imagine if they do add a borderline all-star catcher at the lineup. Who's going to stop them in the American League? The Mariners, the team that's going to lose the division by 8 or 9 games. Those guys, an AL Central team, the Blue Jays, the Yankees, teams that haven't got by them yet. I don't know. I mean, it's looking like it's their American League to lose again and again and again. You got Abreu at first, Altuve at second, the rookie of the year, almost rookie of the year, Julio Rodriguez won rookie of the year, but Pena was a candidate. At shortstop, you got Bregman at third. They're going to add a catcher. You got Tucker and Alvarez on either side of the outfield. Chas McCormick with his little chomp. Astros fans are blessed. They redeemed everything. They're World Series champion, and now they're just going to continue to add and add. So yeah, they might lose Verlander, but oh well, they'll just go get another guy and run it back with the 8 young arms they have in that system. So easy for them to bounce back from anything. All right, we're 20 minutes into the show. I wanted to hold this off for a little bit, but unfortunately, I think we do got to hit the news a little bit. Next on our notes here, Jacob deGrom signed a 5-year, $185 million deal with the Texas Rangers. I think a lot of people are not educated enough to see that the Rangers are probably going to be really good in a year or two. I wouldn't be surprised if they're this year's Baltimore Orioles, where they're just on the fringe. They got a lot of good prospects. Martin Perez is in that rotation. Ding Dunning's got good stuff. Jack Leiter and Kumar Rocker are in their system. And yeah, now they add debatably the best pitcher of our generation. Hayden, you had the great honor of watching him, twice a week for the last decade. First of all, tell me what your immediate reaction was, and yeah, just let it all out, man. This is a space where if you want to rant, if you want to give Jake some love, you do what you need to do. I'm all yours.
Yeah, it was definitely something that was, I think, in the back of a lot of Mets fans' mind. I kind of figured it was 50-50. I thought there was a 50% chance DeGrom would come back and a 50% chance he would leave. When they were shooting out names like Texas or wherever, I was like, okay. You mentioned
the Rangers all about the money.
A very good, like you mentioned, the Rangers are going to be a very good team down the line. Maybe three years from now, give or take, they'll be, right now you look at that AL West, Astros, Mariners. I don't think Texas is doing much against those two teams in the next 2-3 years.
DeGrom still got Trout and Ohtani.
That's true. But DeGrom is going on 34. Going on 35. I think DeGrom is capable of pitching into his early mid-40s, but time's running out, and you're not going to be, once, for the next 5 years, next 3 years, for the next 3 years out of the next 5, most likely when he's pitching in August, the games are going to be done. I don't really see this Texas Rangers team doing much in the next 2-3 years. Who knows? Maybe that'll come back to bite me. I get it. They're young. They have young talent. I will acknowledge that. But it's not doing anything in 2023. I don't know if it's going to do anything in 2024. Maybe 2025 we'll start to see a lot of it. But when it comes to more so DeGrom, I think what more kind of scratches me is DeGrom has always, compared himself to guys like David Wright, who spent his whole entire career with the New York Mets. He's always said, I respect the guy who does that. I love this organization. I love the fans. The typical things that, athletes would say. And what I more find mind-boggling is the fact is he never gave the Mets
was the same way.
He never gave the Mets a chance to say anything. Obviously, Billy Epler and Cohen and, DeGrom and his agent said they'd have nonstop communication once free agency hits. But then DeGrom just kind of walked out and never really gave the Mets the opportunity. And is that kind of saying DeGrom wanted to leave? People are coming after Cohen, coming after Epler. It's not on them. They never had the opportunity to say, Jake, if they're simply enough, they didn't even have an opportunity to say anything to him. DeGrom just took the Rangers offer and said, sayonara, Mets. And, I get it. There's definitely a business factor to when it comes to baseball. I think, that's definitely the inadequate part. When it comes to DeGrom, obviously, I wish him the best of luck when it comes to him pitching in Texas. But 5 years,
at least he didn't go to your rival. That's
true.
Positive. He didn't go to us. He didn't go to the Dodgers, Yankees. We'll see him once a year at max. So
5 years, $185 million. That's a 37 AAV. Yeah, 37 AAV. It's a little bit of a gamble, a little bit of a risk. And I think it comes to the point where you look at this, the Mets took a risk, the Rangers took a risk. The Mets took a risk on potentially letting him go. The Rangers took a risk on potentially giving him one of the highest AAVs. DeGrom has not pitched a full season since 2019. 2020, he wasn't even healthy in that quarter of a season. 2021, he pitched half. 2022, he pitched a fourth. So it comes to the point is, are you going to be worried? I could easily see DeGrom going down to Texas and pitching 200 and, something innings in 2023 and winning the AL Cy Young. And I could simply enough easily see him making the first 10 starts of the season looking good and then being sidelined for the rest of the season. So, I think both of these teams took a gamble. I think if the Mets were to bring back DeGrom, it would be another gamble. And if they let him go, it'd be a gamble. And I think it's just going to be a thing where we're going to have to wait and see next year at this time, maybe 2 years at this time. How's that contract going to work for DeGrom? We'll see. It could be really well or it could be really bad. When it comes to the Mets, I think it's definitely something interesting. I mean, you got Scherzer, so he's more, I guess, that veteran ace. The Mets kind of proved that in game 1 of the playoffs. Didn't work for them, but still.
Yeah.
So, I think, like I said, Mets are definitely going with a young rotation down the line. The Mets have kind of said that the Mets have always been great when it came to developing pitching. I mean, obviously the Mets have some young guys that could be a great rotation, 4 or 5 starter and Tyler McGill and David Peterson. You have a couple of AAA guys, single A guys, and Jose Budo, Calvin Ziegler.
Carrasco's back too, right?
And Carlos Carrasco's back. I mean, we'll see what goes on with Chris Bassett and Tylan Walker. Potentially they'll sign, Justin Verlander, Carlos Rodon. We'll see Kodai Senga. He's been out there. Yeah. So, I guess what the Mets are going to have to do is look, try and go after at least 2 starters. Obviously, now you do have to go after 2, considering DeGrom is gone. Is it something that I'm upset by? I think Mets fans were very divided. I think it was 50-50. I feel like if you put 100 Mets fans in a room, 50 would say they wouldn't care if he came back, and 50 say he would. They would be upset if he didn't come back. So I think it was really 50-50 with a lot of Mets fans if they wanted him back or not. Personally, me, I was kind of saying, you know what, it's been hard because theoretically I haven't really watched him pitched in 3 years. And, you look at this past season.
Yeah.
DeGrom, I mean, I hate to use win-loss, but he only contributed to 5 Met wins out of 101.
His barrel didn't he also have a really high barrel rate this year? Like one of the highest he's had in a long time?
Contact, hard hit rate, a lot of that went up. I mean, I'll pull that up on Savant quickly if you'd like. But DeGrom definitely came back, and he had a couple outings where he really just got eaten alive and looked completely different. Obviously, that Braves game, that Athletics game, and, in August really showed that. And, I think DeGrom is definitely going to be an interesting case down the line. We're going to see how he's going to pan out in Texas. 17th percentile in barrel percentage and 28th percentile in max exit velocity. So, the hard contact was definitely there for him this past season. And, like I said, we're going to see with DeGrom, what does the future hold for DeGrom? Like I said, the Mets are definitely going to either, this is an easy fix. It's safe to say, considering, Cohen and Epler are not going to mess around with this. But it's it's unfortunate, but at the end of the day, the Mets are going to live past this. Like I was saying last year, he only contributed to 5 wins. He made a dozen starts, probably 10, about 10 starts. They won 101 games until August 20th. They were in first place. They had, 70-something wins in August, maybe 80-something wins in August. And that was with guys like David Peterson taking his spot, Tyler McGill taking his spot, openers taking his spot. And they rolled out really well. Scherzer dominated for, I would say, 89% of the season. Bassett, Walker, the rest of that rotation.
It's funny.
DeGrom is one guy out there who pitches once every 5 days. It's not the end of the world. The Mets have a nice young pitching core in AAA. Guys that are that already called up in Peterson, in McGill. They're going to sign key veteran pieces. Pitching, the Mets have always been great with developing pitching.
Bring back Steven Matz.
No one cares about Steven Matz.
Yeah.
Hey, wait. What happened last time? What happened last time the Mets wanted to get Steven Matz and didn't get him? Cohen got pissed. And then next day, they went on a big fire sale. Remember?
Really?
Like Marte, Canna. You remember last year?
That was that day? I remember it, but I didn't know that it was because for Steven Matz. That's funny though.
It was pretty much when they went to sign. Pretty much the Mets and Matt had communication. Matt signed with the Cardinals. I'm guessing there was some miscommunication, some unethical business tactics used. I don't know. Cohen went out to Twitter saying how disgusted he was because Matz didn't sign with the Mets, whatever. And then 24 hours later, Marte, Canna, and Escobar comes to the Mets. Then 72 hours later, Scherzer.
Yeah. So before I make my comments on DeGrom, I'll keep them short because, as I said, you know a lot more about him than I do. I don't want to say anything that's too blasphemy for you to be like, okay, I'm off this podcast forever. Before that, let's catch up on our comments real quick. Jamar says, "Yo, how you doing, Jamar? Another player in this this hardcore game network." So Madala also comes back in here. We'll mention this really quickly. He says Reds keep hurting their fans. I guess is when we were talking about our NL Central recap. He says Phil Castellini saying, "quote Where are you gonna go?" Really is a slap to the face of the fans. Joey Votto is the modern Joe Mauer. Yeah, I think Votto's probably got 2 years at max left in him. I'm sure he'll probably retire before the Reds really see the light of day again, which sucks. But he's definitely a great player in this league. And yeah, it feels bad for Reds fans. It's the first time in a long time that the Bengals have been the priority in that town and not the Reds. For a long time, it had been run by the Big Red Machine, and now Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase and company said, you know what? Since he's our town now. So it's unfortunate, but I'm sure on the other side, they're like, you know what? We get a good NFL team. So a soul for a soul, you could say. Devin Reed comes in. I don't know if he's still in here. If not, we'll definitely get to this later before Hayden has to go out and handle his duties. He says, who is the best shortstop on the market? Stay tuned. We have a prediction of where they're all going to go. My opinion, probably Trey Turner. I guess you could also say Correa. Quickly, what about you, Hayden?
I'd
say Correa and Trey. Correa and Trey are here, and you got Dansby and Xander here, like something like that. So I think that's kind of how it is. And Madala, who's been very active in the comments tonight, says, do you guys believe that the Mets and Braves both had disappointing seasons in 2022? I'll answer quickly. This is the most fun regular season team I've ever had the joy of watching for the Braves. First time they had won 100 games since I was an infant. I was born in 03. That was the last time they did that. So I guess I wasn't really quite born yet if they did it in September 2003. So yeah, I mean, it's very hard to repeat as World Series champions. Really, really hard, especially when you got a team like Hayden's also in your division winning 100 games, and you got the NL pennant winner at your heel with the reigning MVP. So it was a really tough division in the National League East this year. The Marlins were really scrappy there for half the season. They still got Sandy Alcantara. They had Jazz Chisholm. They had Pablo Lopez. Soto was in the division for 2/3 of the season. So disappointing. I feel like it hurt for a little bit, but I think I know the Braves will be back, especially if they handled their duties this offseason like Luke Jackson and Dansby Swanson, and making a trade or two. Like, I know the Braves are not going to be bad for a very long time. But you know what? We already got a ring. I guarantee we'll probably win another one within the next couple of years. So it was sad. I was definitely frustrated for a day or two, maybe a little bit more than that. But seeing them win 101 games and do what they did after winning the World Series, is getting better as they should have with the acquisitions we made after the lockout, was very happy to see their season, and if that makes sense. Not disappointing. And Hayden, what about you? I'm sure you'll have a mixed answer as well.
Yeah, I mean, I would definitely agree with you when you said that, 2022 Atlanta Braves were the best team that you had the privilege of watching. Probably say the same for my Mets. Obviously, I was born 2002. So when it really came to it with the Mets, I mean, I've had 06, I was young. I didn't really care much for baseball probably when I was that young. Obviously, 2015.
I started in 10.
2015, 2016, and then obviously 2022. And this was the second most wins in their franchise history, just behind the 1986 when they won 108 games. So, I mean, second best Mets season in their whole history. Obviously, it unfortunately kind of fell short in October, but that's how baseball works. Obviously, the playoffs, it's so unpredictable. You've seen it past years with the Dodgers, the Yankees, the Astros, whoever. So I definitely think this was by far a really exciting season. I remember all the Mets Phillies comeback, the Mets Cardinals comeback, the walk-offs, the great defensive plays. The combined no-hitter.
Beating us 4-5.
Pete Alonso hitting home runs, Jeff McNeil winning the batting title. Just so many amazing things happened this season for the Mets. And it's just really in a great spot. I mean, you saw guys like Beatty, Alvarez, Vientos, put their foot through the door. They're going to be exciting to watch in the future. So this was by far a phenomenal season for the Mets. Unfortunately, things fell short in October. They weren't able to get the job done. Would I say it was disappointing? Yeah, I mean, I definitely would say the postseason was disappointing. it was unfortunate, how things went out in the wild card. Briefly to talk about it, that everyone was saying that 1-2-3 punch of DeGrom, Scherzer, Bassett was going to be elite, and it's kind of why you lost the wild card, ironically.
They also faced a really good lineup in San Diego, though. That was a good team.
They were. I mean, to an extent, I feel they definitely had some pop in their bats. But I guess to answer your question, I do believe it was a little disappointing in the end in October. But I think for pretty much all of April to last week of September, there wasn't really anything to be disappointed in.
That's very true. Yeah, I'm kind of in the same boat. First couple months were sluggish, but we were all still in the hangover effect. We had just gotten Ronald Acuna Jr. back. Michael Harris had just come up. So it was a very similar thing for us. And, it was definitely fun this summer to see you guys keep pulling away and the Braves chase the Mets down. And finally, at the very end, it came to a climatic finish where both of us finished 101 wins. We just ended up having the head-to-head advantage, which is funny. I don't think the Mets have won the head-to-head series against the Braves since 2016. So I'm sure you guys are looking to knock that birdie down off its hatchet here in this next season. But yeah, I think at the end of the day, you and I talked about it. We knew the National League was going to be a dogfight. We knew that it wasn't just Braves, Dodgers, Mets, or Cardinals. Like, we knew that if the Brewers got in, they could do some damage. If the Phillies got in, they could do some damage. The Padres were nothing to mess with. The Giants, if they could have got in, like, they still had, like, there was 8 teams. Only 6 got in. There were 8 teams that were very well capable of doing some damage there in the National League playoff. Well, in the American League side, we're like, it's Houston. Maybe is he a team challenge them? Who's it going to be, though? Toronto? They choked. Yankees? Swept. AL Central? No way. So, I think we all kind of knew to a degree that we didn't know if it'd be Pujols and company on their last leg to get through. We didn't know if it'd be you guys in year 2 with Cohen, if the Braves were back, baby, and walk right in there. We didn't know if the Dodgers would say, okay, enough of the shenanigans. I mean, we had no clue, and end up being the Phillies, the 3rd place team in the National League East. So, yeah, that's kind of a recap on that one. I'll say this quickly about DeGrom before we lose full track of things. As you said, it's a 5-year deal. We don't really know how good the Rangers will be within those 5 years. And as you said, like, he might pitch into his mid-40s because you said of his injury history, maybe he's got a little bit less tear on that arm than a lot of people think. As you said, he's going on 35. But how old was he when he got called up? Like 26?
So
a little bit younger than that.
That was also a reason, but he didn't start pitching until his junior year in college. You don't see that. That's pretty unorthodox. Usually you see a lot of pitchers usually start high school or freshman year. So he didn't start pitching until he was my age, 20, 21. And I guess obviously he, maybe when you're in high school, freshman in college, if you're a pitcher, you make silly amateur mistakes. You don't have as many innings on your arm. So DeGrom has less innings on his arms. That's why his velocity is going up with age. Fine wine, I guess you could say.
Yeah. Yep. And who knows, as you mentioned before the show, maybe the Mets get the other fine one in baseball and bring the 2012 Tigers back together, Justin Verlander. We'll talk about that next. For DeGrom, 5-year deal. It'll be interesting to see if he stays healthy. And if he does, is it going to be the year where the Rangers are competitive? Is it going to be that 2025 mark that we're talking about where maybe the Astros are a little bit of not what they were? Maybe they're at the level of the Mariners. And they're right in the thick of things, and boom, DeGrom tears has Tommy John surgery and ends the season, and the Rangers are looking around like, hey, that's $37 million down the drain. Or is it going to be a year like this where he pitches 10 starts, looking like the Cy Young favorite, boom, he's out, and everybody's like, well, the Rangers wasted all that money. All you Mets fans are like, oh, well, see, it's your problem now, all that. So it'll be really interesting to see if he stays healthy, and if he doesn't, does he stay healthy when they're competitive? Like, who knows? He might be healthy the next 2 years, and as soon as they're threats to the American League, boom, he's toast. So I don't know why I keep saying boom, but boom, Jacob DeGrom. So yeah, I think our next thing on here, we talked about the winter meetings and most MLB free agency action. I guess the only other trade I wanted to mention real quick from last week. Was there anything else? There might not be another trade, but a couple other small moves. I'll go over them and you can stop and go through any thoughts if you want. Zach Eflin went to the Rays on a 3-year contract. He got moved to the long reliever role at the end of the season. If you're a long reliever in that Philadelphia bullpen where you're not even using high leverage, I took it as a slap in the face. The dude had never been terrible. and I think Led Zeppelin is going to do really good things down there in the Trop. They fix everybody. Former Brave here. Shout out to Chris Martin and the Red Sox are on a 2-year, $18 million, $17.5 respectively $1 million contract. He was with the Cubs and the Dodgers last year after the Braves let him walk. And shout out to the man. He's 36 years old and he just got another big contract. So really happy to see for him. You don't see a lot of guys continue to do that, but he had a lot of good stuff this year. His strikeouts went back up. We talked about Colton for Winker and Abreu. There's the DeGrom news. Kyle Gibson went to the Orioles on a contract. I don't know when they expect John Means to get there. They had a couple starters break out this year, as we kind of expected. A couple of the right-handed arms are starting to come out in force. Kyle Gibson's 35. He was a former Ranger, former Twin. Wasn't the greatest with the Phillies the last year or two, but yeah, that's a deal. I mean, is there anything you really want to speak on that one? Being that we played in the last couple of years, what do you think that does for Baltimore, if anything? I don't really know. I think he's there.
I mean,
who knows? He could have a bad spring training and get cut.
35-year-old veteran for a young team. It'll help. Yeah.
I mean, who knows? He could be the Felix Hernandez for them a couple years ago and just not even make the roster. We could be seeing March 28th, he gets DFA'd and is on MLB Network doing coverage in the studio by June 1st. Who knows? Fred McGriff got elected to the Hall of Fame. People that did not make the 12 votes: Barry Bonds, Roger Clemens, Curt Schilling, Dale Murphy, Rafael Palmeiro, and Don Mattingly. So that's interesting.
Yeah, surprisingly, Matt, I thought he would have made it.
You thought who would make it?
I would have thought Don
Mattingly. As a Braves fan, I do want Dale Murphy to get in there too. So that sucks. I talked to you about it before the show. I feel like our only two Hall of Fame legends that are not in Cooperstown because Fred McGriff got in. I want to see Andrew Jones get in there, and I want to see Dale Murphy get in there. But now they got to wait another year. So we'll see. So yeah, let's get to the point of the show. A couple of our comment section was waiting on the prediction segment before you head out and go meet up with the boys. We talked about Justin Verlander and Carlos Rodon of the Mets earlier. Verlander is the other fine wine in baseball. What do you think that would do if the Mets brought him? Because you said they're close. What is the deal looking like? And if you had to guess, if you don't know anything, that's fine. Yeah, just DeGrom. Jeez, cool. He's gone. He's a Ranger, Blake. Okay, we're ad-libbing here. Give me your updates with Verlander and the Mets.
Yeah, so I mean, obviously, there's rumors that Verlander is close to signing with the Mets. Pretty much, I look at all Twitter; everyone is saying it. It's going to be interesting. I mean, right now, a couple weeks ago, Verlander said that he wanted a Scherzer-like contract. 3 years.
He said I think they're buddies too, aren't they? Like they're still good friends.
Yeah, no, they have homes in Jupiter together, so that's about 30 minutes from Port St. Lucie, where the Mets spring training facility is. But a couple weeks ago, Justin Verlander said he wanted a multi-year contract with a high AAV around Scherzer. So that's going to be a 3-year contract, $40 million. Are the Mets going to be willing $40 million per year? Obviously, are the Mets going to be taking a risk on a guy who's 39, that's probably 4 or 5 years older than Max Scherzer, who's going to be 40 going into the season? I get it. He's a fine wine. No one would have thought he would have had this phenomenal Cy Young season after Tommy John. A lot of people thought he was done after Tommy John. They thought he was fried, but no.
Yeah, people thought he was done before he went to Houston.
Yeah, so I mean, like I said, it's this could be something. Listen, if it's a 3-year deal, give me 2 dominant years. Give me 2 dominant years. I would love him to be dominant for all 3, but I don't know. I really would be worried considering now you don't have to pay DeGrom. It would be a little. Yeah. I don't want to say frustrating, but
there you got other stuff to do.
No, yeah, but it definitely would be a little frustrating if you gave Verlander 3 years, $40 million, but you wouldn't give DeGrom, which DeGrom is literally getting $37 million for 5 years. So I get it. That's 2 extra years, 37 plus $37 million extra. But it would have been a little frustrating, I definitely think. I don't know. I'll say this, and I saw this on Twitter. If the Mets do sign Justin Verlander, I think every Mets fan is going to get over Jacob DeGrom faster than, Alex Rodriguez got over Jennifer Lopez.
Oh, you went there. Yeah. Okay.
I think that's going to be it's going to be an interesting move. Obviously, I mean, there's no secret to what Verlander holds. He's a phenomenal pitcher, postseason experience, veteran ace. Scherzer and him back to back. That'd be phenomenal 1-2 punch. The best in baseball. I said, I've been saying that for the past year and a half now for the Mets. So no, I think that
Tigers reunion.
No, it'd be awesome. And I mean, I talk about the Mets wanting to build a young rotation, having Scherzer and Verlander, two guys who are going to be Hall of Famers, two guys that are going to be, Cy Young favorites, to have them teach Tyler McGill, to have them teach David Peterson, to have them teach a single-A 20-year-old pitcher in spring training. I just love that. So, I think it'd be a decent signing. Performance-wise, I would be a little skeptical about the contract, but I would be pretty satisfied if we got the news.
The Braves fan in me, I'll keep it a buck. I'll say it how I wanted it to. You guys already gave Scherzer the money, and Scherzer's probably 30, going on 38 at this point. I mean, I don't know his exact age.
Max Scherzer is 38.
Okay. And he has 3 years left on the deal, 2 years with an option or something like that?
40. He'll be 40, yeah.
Okay. So, in my point of view, right? I wouldn't be surprised if the Mets were able to re-up something like Chris Bassett as well, if they were able to bring back Nimmo or another center fielder. I mean, also, I see a funny thing that just popped up about Alex Anthopoulos just made a DeGrom leaving the East. I'll get to that. I also see Talking Baseball is posting stuff about Jacob DeGrom going to the Rangers right now. Hey, you guys got to give us our minute to talk about it, and then we'll go watch you guys later. BBD, give Longball their time on the air as well. Just playing. I don't know if you got that joke as well, Hayden. I'm a big Talking Baseball watcher. But yeah, I think Verlander to the Mets would be very interesting. I think they probably got Scherzer and Verlander definitely have an elite year left in them each. That's for sure. Yeah, you're fine. I think Scherzer and Verlander. Yeah, you're fine. I think Scherzer and Verlander have each a year of elite arm action left in them. But I think by 2024, you're starting to have ticking time bombs. If they're getting paid $40 million a year to help a team that's really just not been able to get there yet. I know Cohen's got all the money in the world, but he's not able to fix everything at the end of the day. The Mets are still kind of going through these turmoil changes and trying to fix everything. They were able to get the manager and Showalter. They were able to bring in some veterans, and they gelled really quickly. And they gave my Braves the run of the money this year, gave us our hardest NL East run out of the last 5. And they're going to be a threat for years to come. I'm sure Hayden loves hearing everything while I was gone. But yeah, I think Verlander to the Mets would be really interesting for both teams. Because, yeah, you guys would obviously get another Cy Young winner who's, you also bring Bassett back. You still got an elite top 3 rotation. It's just $40 million a year. Are they going to be elite for the next 3 years? I don't know. You could be paying these guys to be 4.2 ERAs in 2 years, and you're just uh-oh. How does this affect our future plans? Because you said the Marlins are still probably 2 years from being really good. They're slowly getting better, and they haven't traded their pieces away. They're still, even with the terrible ownership, they're building that core, and they're getting better and better every year. The Phillies are going to continue to make moves with Dombrowski. They're starting to get a little bit smarter, keeping the youth, not going as high into the luxury tax. They're starting to figure some stuff out, round out that team instead of having these clearing holes. I mean, last year their holes were defense and bullpen, but it seems like they're starting to chip away and building a full 26-man unit instead of this 10, 11 star, 15 bum unit they've had the last couple of years out in Philadelphia. So, yeah, I think it'll be a very interesting signing if that does happen. I would not be surprised. I think I'll drop an early prediction here. I do think Verlander does go to the Mets. And I think he has a great 2023, probably a good 2024. I don't know if it'll be worth the contract, though. I really don't, but I wouldn't be surprised if Cohen paid it. What about you? What's your prediction for him? We'll get into those.
For Verlander, I'd like probably a 2-year, $75 million.
You think he does go to the Mets?
Yes.
That your final prediction?
Yeah. 2 years.
What about Rodon? Where do you think he lands?
Mets. No. Not gonna lie.
I think in San Diego.
It is possible that the Mets can obtain both of them. Considering Rodon's age,
that would definitely make up for DeGrom.
much lower than Verlander's, probably much lower than DeGrom's. I think it's kind of hard. I mean, obviously, his past AAV was much lower because, the sample size with this constant injury risk, that's been a concern for Rodon. But, he proved the haters wrong the last 2 years. He's been able to stay on the field for the most part, and he's been able to go out there every 5 days. And that was kind of the biggest concern for Rodon. He's going into, he's going to be 30 this upcoming year. So he's definitely going to have a lot to prove. He's in prime age. Yeah, I mean, I think Rodon is going to be a popular guy. I mean, I could see the Mets, the Phillies, the Padres, the Dodgers. I mean, there's so many teams I could see going after him. I could see the Rangers. Yeah, the Giants.
Cardinals, Braves. I mean,
so many teams. So, I mean, Yankees.
Any contending team is going to want Rodon on their team.
Pretty much. Any contending team that would like a Cy Young caliber 30-year-old pitcher, which is pretty much every team is going to want him.
I mean, he's basically a trade market because every team is in on him. He's his own GM. He's his own agent. He gets to choose where to sign. I've seen a lot of people looking at the Padres being that they're letting a couple of their rotational pieces go. Darvish is getting older. Manaea and Clevenger are on their way out. So I wouldn't be surprised if he went down south in California to stay within division, go to the Padres. I think that would be a really good fit for him. I bargained for so long that the Braves should go get him. I bargained about it last year because the only flaw to the Braves rotation right now is we don't have another lefty with Max Fried, and there's a couple big games where he just can't miss enough bats. And I think that having another lefty in the race, especially since Max Fried is not extended yet, and it's looking like he might not be. I wouldn't be surprised if Max Fried's a Dodger in 2 years, based on how our GM Alex Anthopoulos doesn't handle pitching extensions like he does everybody else. He is much more of a positional player GM than pitchers. He'll go out and get veterans on 1-year deals, but he's not. He extended Strider. He brought back Charlie Morton for 1 more year. We have not seen that Max Fried extension. So a lot of people are starting to believe that he's probably out of Atlanta within the next 2 years, which sucks. So that's why I wanted to go get that other lefty. You bring in another lefty on a contract. You pair him with Max Fried for at least 2 years. That's a dominant 1-2 lefty punch. You have Strider. You have Kyle Wright. You got Charlie Morton for 1 more year. Sooner than later, guys like Bryce Elder or Soroka are going to be back and doing their thing. We still got Kyle Muller. So it was more of a best case scenario. I don't know if the Braves are really going to do it based on Anthopoulos' tradition with pitchers, but it would be really nice. Nala also says Yuli Gurriel to the Marlins. I can see that. Them or, Josh Bell just saying, what, I want to go to another National League East team. I wouldn't be surprised if they went for one of those guys. That would be a sneaky signing, with Aguilar and I think Cooper probably both on the way out. To make sure there's nothing else we miss in our private chat before we get to our predictions. I know you got to go here soon. I did see somehow Alex Anthopoulos said that he was, quote, excited to see him go regarding DeGrom. So I'm sure you're like, yeah, it's no shocker. That's interesting that he made a quote on that. So, I think there's other things you got to do. How about you re-sign Dansby Swanson? How about you re-sign Luke Jackson? How about, I don't know. We're getting off track. So lastly here, we talked about Zach Eflin. We talked about Matthew Boyd going to the Tigers on another 1-year deal. So qualifying offers, only 2 people that took them were Martin Perez of the Rangers and Jock Peterson stayed at another 1-year deal in San Francisco. I think what the qualifying offer is like a 19.8 something this year, pretty close to 20 million. I can see Perez taking it. He had a great year in Texas. He's betting on himself 1 more year and also frees up the Rangers more money to spend next offseason if he doesn't repeat his performance. Jock Peterson will get it to anywhere else, a 1-year, $19 million thing. That's kind of what he is nowadays. He clearly likes the West Coast. He played with the Dodgers for the longest time. Was with Atlanta and Chicago for half a season respectively. So yeah, he decided to stay out there, and I think the Giants will definitely push some pins here. Maybe even Aaron Judge. We don't know. They'll definitely be adding pieces. So there's the news part of the show. Let's do some predictions, shall we? Before we head out of here, we'll definitely be back for more of these, depending on how MLB free agency news is, guys. Hayden and I can only control so much, so we'll definitely try to crank these out, once every week, maybe a week and a half. Keep you guys up to date. Regular season comes. I think Hayden and I are going to try to put the show on a road and definitely do it weekly. Try to set a whole schedule up for you guys and get this thing to be better than what it is now. But Yeah, we'll end this off with some predictions. Let's start with the shortstop class. Trey Turner, where's he go?
Trey Turner. I'm going to take a little bit of an interesting take, but I'm going to go the Philadelphia Phillies.
Okay. I think he goes back to the Dodgers. I think it makes the most sense. The Dodgers are not going to come out of free agency without one of the top 4 shortstops, and I think Trey Turner makes the most sense. Carlos Correa.
Yeah, Correa is also going to be a really interesting guy. I mean, considering you do have the possibility of, there's just so many teams that can go after Correa. There could be a possibility of that you move him over to third or second, considering, that's been discussed about with Correa in the past on
He's
last
great
year.
Defensively, though. Like, I think he's too good for that.
Yeah, third base. It's only, 60, half of that feet over.
Yeah.
Where could I see Correa going? I'm going to see Correa to the Dodgers. How about that?
Ooh. See, I originally kind of had that thought, but I don't think the Dodgers would do that. I don't think the Yankees or Dodgers would take him on. I still think it lingers with both of them. That's why I had traded the Dodgers, and I have Carlos Correa going to the Orioles. They offered him last year. They didn't take it. I think he's going to see what they did last year and say, you know what? If you offer me that 10-year, $300 million again, you betcha I'm going to sign here, and Jorge Mateo is going to go get out of there. So we'll see how that goes. But, yeah, I got Correa to the Orioles. All right, I'll leave my guy last. Xander Bogaerts, where does he go?
Xander Bogaerts. I'll say the Orioles. How about that? I'll say he'll stick to his division.
Okay.
I'll get the lower.
That would be something. Him and Frenchie Cordero all heading south together. Frenchie Cordero also had the perfect name as a Red Sox. That sucks that he left. He was like Frenchie Cordero, Boston Red Sox. Frenchie Cordero, Baltimore Orioles. Like, doesn't hit the same. Frenchie, what are you doing? I think Xander goes to the Phillies. I think that Dave Dombrowski connection will play a lot. And his defense has also gotten worse the last 2 years. So Philly's something to look past. I think he is going to be a Philadelphia Philly next year. And then lastly, my guy, Dansby Swanson. Where do you have him going?
I think he's going to re-sign with the Atlanta Braves. I think homegrown talent, they're going to want that.
Appreciate it, Davis. That's one of my former high school classmates. Davis, thanks for tuning in. Yeah, I think Dansby does come back to the Braves. I don't have the same fear that I had with Freddie once the lockout hit. But ultimately, Freddie was a Southern California kid. Dansby is from here. His mom was my 5th grade teacher, my second grade parapro. I played Little League at the same ballparks that he did. So, he has roots everywhere here in the metro Atlanta area. It also makes too much sense because I don't think the Braves will spend $10-15 million more for Correa or a Trey Turner. I think they'll just stick with it. They already lost Freddie. I think the fans will riot even if we had Correa over a guy like Dansby. So, yeah, I'm going to go with Dansby comes back. I don't know what the deal will be. I know that he's got a wedding next week, so hopefully after that he dips himself back in the market. But I don't know if you agree with me. I think Correa and Trey Turner are going to sign before Xander and Dansby. One of those two is going to sign. They're going to set the market, and the other 3 will go based off of that. I will be very shocked if Dansby or Xander shine before.
Yeah, I was actually going to say that. I think pretty much the first shortstop guy to sign is going to pretty much determine the table for everyone down the line. Like Scherzer signing that deal is going to be impressive for Verlander, for all the other key aces down the line.
Well, yeah, I guess it's a year-to-year basis, but yeah, that definitely does linger a little bit. The Braves also had a big news this in a couple. I think starting next year, after might even be at some point during the 2023 season. You know how the Packers are the only owned stocked franchise? The Braves are going to be second here soon. They Liberty Media is selling it off to an own independent industry where, I don't think us robbing players of the past and not spending money is going to be a problem anymore. I think that the Braves fans all around the country are going to start buying stock. We're going to have to keep up with you guys and Dave Dombrowski and the Phillies spending ways if we want to keep this core together and add more every year with the battery and all the money we have coming into the shops every year. I think it makes a lot of sense. My mom and I had a hypothetical question about if the Braves became stocked like the Packers, how well it would do. And I woke up one morning to the news. So I think that we'll definitely my mom and I will definitely do some Christmas shopping at the Braves shop. outside the Battery and spend a little bit of money towards that Braves free agency class. So, yeah, Dansby back to the Braves. I know we only got a couple more minutes here, so let's go to starting pitching. We talked about Verlander. We both said Mets. What about Rodon?
Carlos Rodon. Trying to think. I'm going to say San Diego. Obviously, I know Darvish.
I think San Diego too.
I think he's going to stay in California. I think it's going to come to the point where still questionable with Blake Snell. I mean, 2-3 years ago, they were talking about them being a top-tier rotation, and a lot of that has kind of went downhill. Yeah, Dinelson Lamet hasn't really been his plan. Blake Snell has had his troubles.
Gore.
Some guys out of the picture. Clevenger, exactly. So I think Rodon could be a nice lefty, kind of to make up for that lefty current struggle with Blake Snell.
I mean, who knows? Maybe they'll make Fernando Tatis a pitcher if Xander wants to play. Just playing. Just playing on that part. All right, so that's for starting pitchers. What about Aaron Judge, outfield-wise?
So, yeah, I mean, Aaron Judge is probably the biggest guy on this list by far. And when it comes to Judge, I'm going to go San Francisco Giants. Or it's going to be the Giants or Yankees. I think it's going to be 50-50 is what they're saying.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I just really don't see a world where Judge leaves the Yankees. I mean, if he leaves, I mean, everyone's going to be calling for Steinbrenner and Cashman's head on a stick. I mean, this dude is just – I get it. Will he have another season like 2020? We'll see. But he's still going to be an all-star caliber player, elite player, and you can't let that go. I mean, I know right now they're a little off of the price. Yankees are kind of like $325 million, where he's probably going to want 420, somewhere around that area, 425, 430 maybe. So they're going to have to work a little bit, but I think Judge is going to stay with the Yankees. That would be a disaster for that organization.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of had my thoughts in place last year when I saw he was going to hit for agency. I'm like, if he doesn't go back to the Yankees, he might go to the hometown route. The Freddie Freeman at LA was definitely in my head at that point. I'm like, well, he's from the Bay. He's definitely not going to Oakland. So San Fran is going to be in the picture. And yeah, sure enough, he had the AL MVP season, and it'll be interesting to see where he does go. Yeah, I wouldn't be mad if the Yankees just locked him up. So he's out of the National League. You guys face him twice a year. We face him 3 times a year. I don't think that'd be a huge issue. If it's an equal market value, if they give him the same offer, I think he'll probably choose San Francisco, because I think in this day and age, people are willing to leave playing in New York City than flocking to go play in New York City. That's more the Yankees fans than you guys. But I'm sure you know exactly what I mean, that players nowadays are like, I'm not just going to go be in the spotlight and get heckled for doing a single thing wrong. So I'm going to leave with my gut, and I'm going to say he goes to the Giants. I'm kind of in that same boat as you, though. Your guy, really quickly, Brandon Nimmo.
Yeah, Brandon Nimmo, I think he's going to re-sign with the Mets. I think it comes to the point where, Nimmo's been with this organization for a while. Drafted him straight out of high school. I really do see a world where the Mets would give him this 6-year, $175 to $200 million sort of contract, maybe 7 years. I think that'd be a fair contract that both the Mets and Nimmo and Boris's agent would be keen on. Yeah, I mean, because that's hard. I mean, you look at that, you look at that outfield market. It goes Judge, Nimmo, and then the tier kind of takes a couple steps down. So I see a world where the Mets do re-sign Nimmo, considering you didn't bring DeGrom back. Nimmo's kind of like your second internal guy that's going to cost a lot. Obviously you signed Diaz, so yeah, and I'll get to that question. You re-signed Diaz. That was definitely a substantial cost and money. So you didn't bring DeGrom back, so I think
you guys wasted no time on that either.
Yeah, so I think you would bring Nimmo back. So I think Nimmo's going to return to the Mets.
I think it's between you guys, and I know the two biggest suitors are the Rockies, because they can offer him a crap ton of money and he can hit 20 home runs a year there. Or I saw the Blue Jays maybe putting something in place. Oh, yeah, that's true.
I mean,
I could see the Blue Jays. Yeah, I mean, maybe this is my Braves fan coming out at me. I think he goes to the Blue Jays. I know you're not gonna like that. I think just the moves they made in process. I think he's I think he's that left-handed bat they need in that lineup. They opened a spot in the outfield for him. But yeah, if I had to make a second guess, if you guys don't land another certain player who you're aiming for, whether you miss on a Rodon or a Verlander or trading for a catcher, like you guys all have the plans of doing so. You know more about the organization than I do. I do think if he's still available, yeah, there's a chance if we get to February or even late January, he's definitely coming back to the Mets. But if he signs over here on this winter meeting week, I wouldn't be surprised if it seemed like Toronto swooped him up. Maybe that'd be good news for you guys because that means you can still rebound and get somebody better. Who knows? Madala says real quick, would you play for a team whose fans booed you even though you're the main reason that you're in the playoffs? No.
Oh, he's talking about Judge. Okay,
yeah.
never mind. I was confused.
Or even just like New York sports in general. I think that's just kind of how it is.
Yeah.
Especially like the mainstream Giants, Yankees, Knicks. This is more Mets, Jets, Nets. You guys are not quite as bad, but it's rough this day and age.
Yeah. I mean, I kind of thought it was silly that Yankee fans were booing the guy that they were literally cheering to make history, but
whatever. And Joey Gallo wanted out of there mid-season. Like it's crazy. Like I think nowadays there's more thrown into the player mental health, programs, and also social media as a presence, and every player is on them for the most part. If they're not, they're not a household name. So you see a lot of players wanting to leave New York more than stay in New York because of the other factors, people, and they'll be the old heads saying, "Oh, it's just because we know ball and we expect better from these athletes." No, they just don't want to be thrown trash at and booed every little thing they do and getting slurred at every opportunity. So I understand why players want to leave there. I'm trying to think if there's any free agents we missed. I guess we'll do trade a yes or no trade prediction. Will Brian Reynolds get traded?
Yeah, that was the next guy I was going to bring up because I know I mentioned the center field market and just the outfield market in general with Judge Nimmo, that it takes a bit of a couple big dive. I definitely think Brian Reynolds would be a decent obtainment, for the right cost, obviously. You look at the Pirates organization, they're young. They have a lot of prospects. They have a lot of, first-year pre-arbitration guys. Ke'Bryan Hayes, O'Neal Cruz. They're going to be great down the line. Ke'Bryan Hayes was locked up on a deal. Most likely O'Neal Cruz is probably going to be locked up pretty soon. So, yeah, I don't know. I mean, Brian Reynolds, he had a really good 2021 season. Kind of slowed down this season.
Defensively.
And offensively, too. I mean, he hit for a decent average, on-base percentage to an extent. But, yeah, I mean, I could easily see Brian Reynolds getting traded and, probably going to – I mean, I think there's going to be a lot of contenders out there, but I could see maybe like a team like the Guardians or, Blue Jays needing it out, Have you guys saw this, but one time. Hold on. One time I got a DM. That's not good. But yeah, I think Brian Reynolds would definitely be an interesting possible trade candidate. Obviously, Sean Murphy is going to be a possible trade candidate. Pretty much a lot of the people on that Oakland Athletics squad. But yeah, Sean Murphy is a guy that I've been saying since his rookie season in 2020 is that every team should go after him. I mean, we talk about a top 3 catcher in the league, maybe top 2. Great defensively. He's going to hit,
catcher
270. He hits in Oakland, and that's a hard ballpark. But this is a guy
who's also under contract till 2026.
Yeah, so you have the years of control in favor. This is the guy who's going to hit, 260, 270, OPS around 800, maybe 20 so homers a year. Great defensively, one of the best defensive catchers. Defensive metrics are up to par. I mean, in my opinion, I think he's the best catcher in the AL. So I definitely think, there's been a lot of suitors for Sean Murphy, the Guardians, the Rays, the Braves. So we'll see how things pan out there.
Yeah, like the Braves are a slippery slope. That would take a lot of things to go right. You have a couple, we don't know if it have a follow-up trade to a Sean Murphy deal because you already got Darno. Manny Pena still on a 1-year contract from a 2-year deal. He's on a contract year. You had the National League DH Contreras. So for the Braves to do it, like we already handed them Shea Langoliers last year. They're not going to want to take another Atlanta catcher on in the process. But if the Braves were able to bring in Sean Murphy, either Contreras locked up to 2029, he can play a lot more DH on days he's not catching. You bring in Sean Murphy, he comes to a better hitter's ballpark, he comes to a better hitter's lineup, and he's a lot better defensively than what Darno and Contreras are. They got some noodle arms back there, to be completely honest. It would be a great deal for the Braves, but as you said, there's so many people in the market where, I just don't know if it's going to happen. Earlier tonight it was, and now it's not. So I don't know. There's a lot of moving pieces. So, to have a short-term answer, you think Bryan Reynolds is going to get traded?
I think 50-50. I think there's more of a chance, obviously. Sean Murphy
come on. Yeah. Sean Murphy, I will say yes. I
wouldn't be surprised.
Sean Murphy was the guy they held on to.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if Bryan Reynolds gets traded. Willson Contreras is a free agent.
What about Willy Adames, lastly? Yeah. Contreras is after next year, I think. What about Willy Adames? Does he get moved? He's been in the market.
Willy Adames, shortstop. I don't know. One of probably the lowest tier shortstops that would be on the market.
Yeah.
No, honestly, Adames wasn't horrible in Tampa. I mean, he joined Milwaukee and he wasn't really himself. I guess the typical guy that leaves Oakland or Tampa.
Yeah. He couldn't hit in the Trop. He hit better in Milwaukee, but other things took a dip. There was a world where they could have put Willie at second and Wander at short and been really good, but they didn't. So, since I know you got to go, we'll answer him quickly. I think B-Ray, I don't think he gets traded. The Pirates office says they already are planning on holding on to him, which I think is smart, even though he's asking out of there. If you were going to trade him, you should have traded him in 2019 and 2020. You had a couple years to do so. The Pirates are almost out of the rebuilding stage. Their core is coming together. They're probably, and with how the NL Central is shaping up, they could be better sooner than we think. I think it takes too much of a loss to trade him now than it did a couple of years ago and let guys develop in that minor league system with the guys that are starting to pop up now, like O'Neal Cruz, like Brian Hayes, all the guys that are around them. They're getting better. They're starting to sign these veterans to 1-2 year deals to solidify other places. It's just David Bednar broke out last year. So I think Bryan Reynolds stays put. Even if he doesn't want to be there, it just made too much sense to trade him previously. If you do it now, what are you doing, Pittsburgh? You're beating the Falcons today is what you're doing, actually. But Pirates, what are you doing? Willy Adames, that's an answer that I think we'll maybe see a clear ultimatum on later in the offseason because we got 4 shorts. We'll have to see where they go first. And if the Brewers are still sellers or buyers. So that one, I'll say no for now, but I wouldn't be surprised if I was wrong. If we come back and look at this in April, we're like, oh, he's on the Dodgers, And for Sean Murphy, yeah, I think he absolutely does get traded. They kept Frankie Montas for the trade deadline. They kept Sean Murphy for another year. They made as many moves as they could last offseason, but I'm not surprised that the A's handled it. They kept a couple other controllable guys to keep getting pieces as the years go by, so they're not just trading everybody at once. But yeah, I think that's probably we gotta go. So we'll wrap things up real quickly. If you guys want to follow us on Twitter, he's at Mets Talk Hayden. Isn't that correct?
Yeah, Mets Hayden. You guys could follow me
Mets
on
Talk
Twitter.
Hayden, right? Mets Hayden.
Mets Hayden.
And if you guys want to follow me right here, News and Sports Detail, we'll follow you guys back, talking all things baseball. I talk other sports over there too. I know, Hayden, you also have, believe it or not, we do like more than one sport. We're just very knowledgeable at this game of ball base. So yeah, we'll see you guys in the near future. We'll see you guys around the Hardcore Sports Network. Make sure you guys sub to the channel, sub to Mets Talk with Hayden, sub to this channel here. Anything you guys want to do. We'll talk to you guys within the next week or two, depending on what other moves break out. Yeah, we're really just at the handle of the hot stove. Whatever moves happen, we'll come on and talk about it. So yeah, we'll see you guys ever so often here this offseason and this next 2023 season. We'll see you guys a whole lot more. So thank you guys for joining us here on this Sunday night, or if you're watching the replay and you made it this far, thank you so much. Here's a cookie for you. And yeah, well, you go hang out with your boys, Hayden. I'll go watch some Sunday Night Football, and I will talk to you guys next time.
Peace out.
Peace out, guys.